Alright, welcome to Simply Good Kitchen. My name is Bill Apodaca, and today we're covering braising, stewing, also known as crock-pot cooking. And the technique we're focusing on today, there's always 7 essential steps we follow to end up with a great braise. And the first thing we want to focus on is the meat. And the meat we're using, or you want to use in a braise, is a tough piece of meat, which means it's a hard-working muscle on an animal. So we're talking about lamb shanks, ossobuco, beef short ribs, a brisket. All these things require slow, low cooking time in a moist environment to make them very tender. And today we're going to be braising our boneless beef chuck short ribs. And the first step into a good braise is we season these up. And today we're just using salt and pepper. But you could use marinade. In some French recipes they have you marinated in red wine. Or we could put a spice blend on it. Let's say if we're doing Moroccan braised short ribs, we would maybe toss them in salt, pepper, cinnamon, saffron, and cumin. But today we're making a Yankee pot roast, so we're going to leave it salt and pepper. Now step 2, we're going to take it over to our hot saute pan and get a really nice sear on them. And whenever we're preheating our pan for a nice sear, we want it to hover around 425 to 450 degrees. And this pan's been preheating for the last 5 minutes. So we'll remove the thermometer and we'll place a little bit of oil in the pan, and we'll place these short ribs in the pan and sear them for 2 minutes on each side until all 4 sides are seared golden brown. And that's going to give you complex flavor because you're caramelizing the natural sugars in the meat, and it's going to give your sauce a really nice dark brown color. So 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, all 4 sides will be seared golden brown. So we'll come back to this in 8 minutes. Alright, our first 2 minutes is almost up on these short ribs, and you can see that nice golden brown sear we've created. And here we've had some going a little bit longer, and you can see that beautiful, nice golden brown crust we've created. And now we can move on to step 3 on a braise once your meat is golden brown. So, step 3, we're going to remove this meat from the pan, and we're going to place it in our braising pan like so. We're then going to get our aromatics, which is our carrot, celery, and onion, and place them in the pan that the meat just came out of. And we're going to cook these down for 8 to 10 minutes till they get a beautiful dark golden brown and they become very aromatic and sweet. So remember, step 3 to a good braise, stew, or crock pot is to brown your vegetables up and get them smelling really good. And you'll also notice that we always start in a short-sided saute pan. Most braising recipes have you start in your braising pot here. But what we've found is if we loaded this up with meat and started to sear it, the steam can't escape these tall sides. It falls back down in there, and then all of a sudden this meat is swimming in its own juices. And you end up steaming the meat rather than searing it. And when we do it this way, it just really cuts your cook time in half, your browning time in half, so we can get our meat browned up faster and our vegetables browned up faster. Once these vegetables are browned up, we'll come back to it and move on to the next step. Okay, now that our vegetables have browned up for the last 8 to 10 minutes, they're smelling really aromatic and delicious. So right there we've added a whole nother dimension of flavor to our braise. And now the 4th step into a great braise is we brown up our tomato paste, because tomato paste is raw tomatoes they've just dehydrated to a paste. There's a lot of natural sugar in there, and we can caramelize that up. So we'll add a little bit of oil in there and fry it up. And anytime we're using tomato paste, whether we're making a tomato sauce or a pizza sauce, we always make sure we brown up our tomato paste in the pan before any liquid goes in. It's going to take about 30 seconds to a minute. The other thing we like to do is saute up our spices. And in this case we're calling our garlic the spice. And this is going to toast up in 30 seconds to a minute and start smelling really good. You get that toasted garlic aroma. But if you're using any kind of spice, you want to make sure you toast it up in here before you add any liquid. Because spices are oil soluble, meaning they have their own natural oils in the spice. And if you toast it up in a little bit of oil, you bloom the flavor of the spices and you take it to the next level of flavor. So if you're making a pot of chili, I can't tell you how many times people sprinkle in the chili powder, the garlic powder, the coriander and chili powder right in the liquid. They would take the time to saute up their onions, and then after the onions are sauteed up, bloom those spices in with the onions before any liquid goes in. You'd end up with a much better tasting chili. So this is just smelling really good. That garlic's toasted up. And if you see you need to add just a little bit more oil to get that frying sensation going on, you can do that. And now we can move to step 5. And step 5 is adding our alcohol. Today we're using a Cabernet red wine. And we want to reduce it down. And when you reduce that wine down, you concentrate the flavors, making it very flavorful, very concentrated, and you're adding yet again another layer of flavor. Can't tell you how many times we see people make a braise like this or make a tomato sauce and they add 2 cups of red wine in at the very end. And what happens, it waters down your sauce. You never get to cook off the alcohol, so the first thing you taste is raw alcohol. And you never get to concentrate those flavors down by reducing them. And today we're using red wine, but if we're making a pork dish, we might be using a Riesling or a hard apple cider. You could use bourbon, white wine, Madeira, Marsala. The list goes on what you can use. And then once this is reduced by half, or sometimes we like to take it till it's all the way evaporated off, we're then going to add our braising ingredients. So step 6 is add your braising ingredients. Today we're using chicken stock, but you could use veal stock, beef stock. This depends what flavors you're trying to achieve. Some chopped tomatoes. These are fresh, but by all means you can use canned. And we'll throw some herbs in there. We'll throw some bay leaves in there. And if we're doing lamb shanks, you could throw rosemary in there, sage, thyme. The list goes on and on. And once this liquid goes over the meat, we're going to bring it up to a full boil so it's nice and hot. And we're going to slow braise it till the beef is fork tender. And depending on the cut of meat you're using, it could take 3 to 4 hours for this to happen. And we're going to show you what it looks like when the meat's fork tender. And then we're going to make a sauce out of the braising liquid once everything's cooked up. So you can see how concentrated that red wine is. Our chicken stock goes in, tomatoes and bay leaf, and we're just gonna throw it all in our braising pot. Let's move this forward, and we'll bring it to just a simmer. Okay, the chicken stock, the aromatics, the meat, everything's all come up to heat now. So we're gonna throw a lid on it and place it in our 300-degree oven. And we're gonna slow braise it for the next 3 to 4 hours till that meat is fork tender. And then we'll pull it out and show you how to finish the rest of the dish then. Okay, it's time to check our braise. Our 3 hours are up. And what we're looking for is to see if the meat is fork tender. So what you want to do is get a piece of meat out of there, place it on the plate, and then with forks just kind of see if it comes apart easily like this. See how that shreds apart? That means the meat is tender all the way through. If we had to struggle to pull that apart, that means it's still really tough. Have to braise probably for another hour. But now what we're left with is this really nice braising liquid in here, full of flavor, and the meat. So we're gonna make a sauce with the meat. With the braising liquid. So we'll pull the meat out of there, and we don't want to serve our bay leaves, so we'll pull our bay leaves out of there also. And then traditionally what you would do is you would strain off this liquid, discard the vegetables, and you might thicken this up with a roux. But what we like to do is puree all the vegetables that are in the liquid to thicken it up. So we use a bar blender, and just make a little note to yourself. If you fill a bar blender all the way up with hot liquid and turn it on liquefy, it's gonna blow the top of the lid off and spray hot liquid all over your ceiling. So what we do is just fill the carafe a quarter of the way full, turn it on liquefy, and you can see how it wanted to jump out of there. Imagine if it were all the way full. And now we can add. And now you have all those great vegetables pureed in with the sauce, and it's going to be absolutely delicious. So we'll give it a taste for seasoning. It's good, it needs a little salt though. And then we're going to place our meat back in there, and we can serve it just like this or chill it in the refrigerator and heat it back up at a later date. This will last 5 to 6 days in the refrigerator, and they tend to get better with flavor as a day or two goes on. All those flavors meld together. So those are our steps to a good braise. Remember, we season the meat, brown the meat, we saute our vegetables, or what we call aromatics. Step 4, we toast our spices. Today we did the garlic and tomato paste. Step 5, reduce down your alcohol. Step 6, all the braising liquid goes in and you braise it till it's fork tender. And then finally, step 7, you make a sauce out of the braising liquid. And you'll have a great braise. Thanks for joining us.